Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to this special webinar today with Humaira, our special guest here at VanHack. I hope you are all there.
Hello.
The chat to
Good
talk to
morning.
us. Good morning. I see we have lots of participants. People are joining. So you have like 1 minute or two just to wait people from everywhere joining us today. And if you hear some weird noises today from we are working from home and like my dog is like sometimes gets crazy. He's a sweetheart, but
That's
he's
okay.
a baby here.
He has stuff to say.
Yeah, totally. Welcome everyone. I think we can hit the start button because it's like 2 minutes now from the time that we booked, and we have lots to share. So I just wanted to welcome everyone today. My name is Nidia Paniza. I talk to you guys like through platform and through email, so we already know each other. And I'm very excited to welcome Humaira. Today she's the brain and the heart and the transformative energy behind BestHuman. And she's one of the best humans we know.
Thank you.
And yes, and like her company, she's the CEO and the founder of BestHuman, which is formerly known as Local. So I think some of us had the chance to learn from Humaira before as Local, and now is BestHuman. She'll be talking more about this like rebranding. So it's not only the name, I think it's like, the whole package. And she can, we'll have the chance to talk more about it. But yeah, Humaira is a Pakistan, like a woman from Pakistan, a woman in tech. So she knows what it's like to feel like to be an immigrant in another country. She knows how it's like, having like English is not my first language and all these things that I am an immigrant myself. And when we are in Canada right now. So it's just like how we engage with people, how we talk about ourselves with others. This all can impact because we are immigrant and English is not our first language. And she's like her passion for diversity and empowerment just shines through in everything she does. And her company's grown big time. It's got thousands of members and works with like some huge Fortune 500 companies. And now with all this like coaching and mentoring programs to help people become better leaders, I think Humaira has lots to share. And I can't wait to hear from you today, Humaira. Welcome.
Thank you. Wow, that's amazing. So again, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, my goal here is honestly just to kind of make sure that you all get the most value out of this session. So there will be, while this is a webinar, I would still love to make it as interactive as possible. So, I might be asking you a few questions. So let's make the chat really engaging and interactive. And then again, this is for you. And I want to make sure that you get the most value and any questions you may have answered. And I have put together a little bit of a presentation, but it'll be lots of stories, lots of tips, lots of strategies, yeah. All right, so let's begin. Before we get started, I thought I would share a little bit about the agenda for today that I've prepared. So I'll start with sharing my journey a little bit, my journey from Pakistan to Canada. And then I'll also share some challenges that I face, some critical challenges that I think most of the immigrants face. So we'll talk about that. I'll also share how I overcame some of those challenges or navigated some of those challenges. And then we'll talk a little bit about imposter syndrome. And we'll kind of end with tips for whether you're doing an interview or a presentation, or just selling yourself, selling your ideas, whatever have you. So I've got those tips for you. And then we're gonna end with the Q&A section of today. So yeah, let's get started. Let's see. So a little bit about myself. Nadia, you're so kind to give me the platform to share a little bit about what I do and the company, but I wanted to really focus on my journey and how that might be more of a relevant journey that a lot of immigrants have. So originally I'm from Pakistan. I was born and raised there. My family moved to Canada in 2005. I was doing software engineering from one of the top universities in Pakistan, just Karachi University. And I had the highest GPA there. And when we moved to Canada, we moved to Toronto, and I got accepted into all big schools, but I chose York University as my school. As an immigrant, I just wanted, York University. I'm not sure how many of you might be familiar, maybe not too many, but it's basically a one large campus. And I felt more like, okay, this is this one big place, I can kind of navigate it, but other universities can be spread across downtown, like U of T, University of Toronto, or Ryerson. They were just like jungles, and I just felt like too much. This is too much. So anyway, I chose York, and because I went to one of the best schools, all my credits were transferred. So I started actually as a third-year student in computer science program at York University. I was 20 at the time, and I remember, just coming from Pakistan, we were 40 to 60% women in engineering at any given time, electronics, electrical, mechanical, computers. But, what I learned in Toronto was that I was the only woman in a class of 160 in third year. And that was shocking to me, especially as an immigrant. You're thinking, oh, we're going to Canada, it's a developed country. So they would have, I didn't even think that there would be a problem, but I was either one of the few or one of the only ones. And that obviously, gave me a lot of anxiety around, like, do I belong here? And, what's my path? So, I tried different classes for 8 months. And we were actually studying AI back then, which is pretty cool. But I just couldn't do it. So not because, I didn't feel that I had the capabilities, but it was just that I just didn't feel like the culture was there, the representation was there. And maybe, and actually I also got a job at a database company, an IT company in Toronto, and there weren't any women developers. And so I just felt like, okay, maybe Canada's so different. Maybe I need to do something else. And then I actually moved into communication studies, which was so different. And the reason for me choosing communication studies at the time was obviously language, just to kind of learn. It's obviously, a lot of us learn English in our countries. And so I knew English, but not as fluent, some different dialects, different words, pronunciations. And I remember, just thinking, okay, maybe this is how I can learn about the culture, about the media. Like, it was exciting. And it was very hard. Going from engineering to communications was very hard. However, I ended up graduating from that program, and I ended up working, because of my background, I ended up working for a lot of tech companies over the last 15 years, doing marketing communications, project management, quality assurance, like whatever have you. I've tried different things. And then I started my company in 2018. Actually, we just turned 6 years old and we haven't celebrated properly, but it's just go, go, go. Anyway, 6 years old today now. So the lots of lessons learned. Now, we started with a networking app for women, moved into a mentorship platform for women in tech, and now we're providing leadership and mentorship to everybody, because we learned that there's such an opportunity for people to learn from each other, and especially from people who've been there, done that. And so our platform, is global. We work with a lot of companies, mostly medium-sized businesses at this time, to support their leaders and women and minorities as well. So that's a little bit of background. I'm going to see if there's anything. Oh yeah, please share where you're all from, and let's get started. So, challenges. Obviously, most of you probably have faced language as a barrier, whether it's our own created barrier where we feel like, oh, maybe people won't understand us, or maybe we find challenges. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Cultural adaptation, that was very, very hard. Coming from, again, like a country like Pakistan, which is very, I don't know how much you know about Pakistan, but it's usually in the news and media for all the wrong reasons. But you know, where we do have, in especially working class population, huge focus on education. And I did grow up watching some Hollywood movies, some, you know, other international movies as well. And so, but however, moving from a country like that at the age of 20, which is very different, you know, third world country, to Canada, just, oh my gosh, like looking back, it was like, how did I ever do it? And then third thing is lack of skill. So I'll talk about the language barrier first, like, and I'll be sharing some stories and things. So my first interaction where I felt like, oh, this is going to be a problem, you know, was when I went to Walmart in Toronto, and I was looking for curtains for my window. And I go there, and you know, there was a sales associate, because I couldn't find them, find the curtains. And I go up to one of the associates, and I asked, you know, where can I find curtains? And she just kind of looked at me, and she was just like, well, what are you saying? And I was like, well, curtains, you know, windows, like curtains. And she was still like, I don't know what you're saying. And I was thinking, like, what could I possibly be saying? You know, I mean, curtains are curtains. I don't know, however you say it. I was giving examples, and I don't know if she really didn't understand me or she was pretending to not understand me. But I just felt so humiliated, you know, that, well, you know, I'm a proud person, you know, even at age 20, like I felt like I had accomplished a lot, and why couldn't she understand me? Anyway, so my dad comes over, and he shares with her in similar language or dialect, curtains, and she immediately got it. And that's where I was like, this is not good. And then another thing happened where I was at work, and I was talking about my career choices and, you know, where I wanted my career to go. But at the time I said, like, you know, growing up, we would say, instead of career, we would say carrier, but that's how we said it. And she did, my friend, she just didn't understand me. She's like, what do you mean you have a carrier? Like, what are you talking about? And I just was like, yeah, like, you know, my work, my future. And she's like, oh, career. And I was like, yeah. And then it was like, again, like, you know, there's a lot of instances like that where I felt like my accent, my language is going to be a bit of a problem. Even though looking back, I wish I hadn't worked to change my accent. So yeah, I had to actually work to change my accent, because I felt like, I don't want to be made fun of, and I need to change my accent. So obviously, you know, whether at York University, whether at my workplace, most of the people that I was surrounded by were, you know, born and raised Canadians. And so, you know, I started to pick up from them, and I would practice, like, how do you say water? I remember my brothers actually making a lot of fun of me for saying that, because they were just like, what is she saying? It's not water. And anyway, so despite all that, right, like, I just felt like, at the time, I felt like I needed to speak like Canadians do. And I want to tell you here today that I do wish I hadn't changed my accent, maybe picked up a few words here and there to be better understood. But, you know, in the process, I did lose a little bit of who I was. And I'm now finally starting to, you know, piece that together and just be like, you know what, actually, we should be proud of where we come from. We actually speak multiple languages, and yeah, like, why should we change our, you know, accent? So anyway, that's just one thing. So language is a huge thing. You know, a lot of people, I hear from a lot of people, well, maybe people don't understand me, and maybe they can work a little bit better to understand you. And I will tell you, like, now the workplaces are changing, and there's a lot of focus on how can we be more diverse? How can we be more inclusive? You know, and if you speak a little differently, that's actually fantastic. It also means that you speak a different language, and maybe that could be an asset to us. So language barrier. And then the other challenge, you know, I faced was obviously cultural adaptation. It was very hard. You know, there's things that are done differently here. You know, growing up, you know, just as an example too, and it's more of a personal example, but, you know, people would just come to our house at 11 p.m. at night. And we would, without even sharing that they're coming, right? There were no calls, no nothing. People are just showing up, and you're used to that. But here, obviously, you know, I learned that you couldn't just you couldn't just show up. Same with the workplace, right? Like there's some rules, there's some policies, there's some boundaries. Even when I was in school, it was very similar. Like I just, I took the time to really understand, because at the end of the day, culture, what is culture, right? It's your way of life, how you live. How we lived in Pakistan was very different from how a lot of people live here. Even Pakistanis that live here, they changed themselves so much to belong. So that was a big challenge for me, because this meant, unlearning a lot of things, relearning a lot of things. But again, I really want to reiterate, I wish I could turn back time and not change too much. Yeah, but it's good to know, right? It's good to know how interviews are done, how to get a job, how to be confident, how to really own yourself and sell yourself when you're in an interview, or when you're selling a product, a service, whatever have you. I do wish that we could be, and I will tell you, this is a lot of work, emotional work, because we're trying to integrate into a new society and culture and workplaces. Yet, I don't know if it's a pressure or it's my pressure, just kind of keeping who you are intact in some way, shape, or form. So that was a big challenge for me. And I think I'm now finally, I've been here for the last how many years? 15, almost 19 years coming up. And I'm now finding that balance of, okay, this is who I am, this is where I come from. And yeah, so I think we have a great opportunity to build a life of our own. It's not coming from our parents, it's not coming from our society, it's what we choose to build. So I see it as a positive, that yes, it can be hard, but at the end of the day, we all bring something different. We have an opportunity for a fresh start. And third thing, lack of skill. So lack of skill, I really felt it when I moved from computer science to communication studies. You will have to do some things that you're not very good at, or that you will have to learn to be better at. So again, I think looking back, when I moved into communication studies, my motivation was just that I just wanted to learn about culture. I wanted to learn about people. I wanted to learn the language and the way that people spoke, because most people doing communication studies at the time, this was 2006, were, again, born and raised Canadian. So what a great opportunity, right? And that really did help me, because you have to write a lot, you have to present a lot, you have to have theses, you have to have your own opinions. So it was a lot. And I think my engineering mind, going from that to creativity or writing, was just extremely hard. But with all these things, obviously, I have been able to successfully overcome a lot of these challenges. Some I'm still figuring out, but a lot of them have a common theme, which I will share. So a lot of them also stem from lack of confidence, right? Like I think from my here, like language barrier, like, oh my gosh, like, am I not good enough? Am I not going to be understood? Cultural adaptation, how long is it going to take? Like, am I ever going to be fully integrated into the society? Lack of skill, I don't know this. I don't want to fail. Like I was a straight A student. And I, in fact, had the highest GPA. Going from that to doing something that you're not very good at, there was a lot of confidence challenges there. And so these are the 5 tips. And I'll also, share this presentation with VanHack. They can share it with you. So please don't feel the pressure to write everything down. So these are the 5 tips I had, that helped me navigate all those challenges. And I think they can help you, and they're very simple. So practice as much as you can. Now, again, I do want to keep on reiterating the fact that please do not change yourself just to belong, right? Some changes are good, obviously, depending on the market, depending on the job, because we're here to learn anyway, right? Like we're moving countries, we're moving lives, we're here to learn and grow. But practice has been huge. Like before any presentation, before doing anything, I feel like despite a lot of that I've accomplished, I still feel a bit of that fear if I haven't practiced enough. And so practice. If you're going for an interview, make sure, and I have some tips for all of that later too, but make sure you're looking at yourself in the mirror or a camera, or record yourself. So whatever have you, make sure you practice. So, you know, I was that student that, so obviously I wasn't a very good writer when I got into communications, and it's all about writing and presenting yourself. So I remember somebody told me, I talked to my teacher and said, look, I'm having a hard time writing. I've never written. And so my teacher recommended going to the writing center. So there was a writing center, and you had to book appointments, and you could go there, and there were experts, you know, to teach you how to write. Now there's academic writing and there's professional writing. I'm not going to bore you with the details there, but I really remember booked my first appointment. I went there and I shared with them what I had written for that paper, and they were like, not good. And I was like, look, I want you to be as candid as possible and really share what I could be improving. Share with me the format, the tips, and like, give me everything. And I remember they were like, well, it doesn't work that way, but, you know, come back again. So they gave me a little bit of something to work on. And they were like, you know, come back maybe next week. And I was like, can I come back again this week? And they were like, sure, if there's availability. So obviously, you know, I went into the system, I booked a time, and I was there again. And then again the following week. And I kept on going, right? Because I was like, I just want to really nail this. You know, I remember my first paper probably had like a B+ or something, which isn't too bad for somebody who didn't used to write. But I was just not happy with that. I was like, I want to just be better. And how can I get an A? And so I kept on going to a point where they were like, look, we think you are hoarding all the spots. You know, we've given you a lot of help. You know, why don't you kind of like wait it out and, you know, just drop in. If there's nobody there, we'll take you in, but you come here a lot. And I was just like, oh no. But I still kept going, right? Like I would drop in, and there's a lot of times where I would go and there would be somebody and I'm like walking back. But anyway, practice was huge. So regardless of what it is, whether it's an interview, whether it's a presentation, whether it's you, I don't know, like selling something, or you're even asking for, you know, somebody to help you with something, practice is key, and how you frame that, and how you do it over and over, so much so that it becomes second nature. Second thing, learning to be better. You will never know everything. And I think as immigrants, I don't know if you agree, please let me know in the chat, but I always felt like I had to be the best. Like I had to know everything to get what I want. Not true, because that holds us back. If we really focus on, well, I need to know everything, and I need to know everything really, really well, we're not going to be able to, because fear will always be there, right? Like we'll never, I shouldn't say never, it's a strong word, but just know that you will never know everything. Nobody knows everything. And it's all about progress and not perfection. And that was hard, because, you know, we always say like practice makes perfect. But I would say focus on definitely practice, but also focus on, you know, progress. Are you better today than you were yesterday? If that's the case, you're good to go. And you can continuously keep on getting better. And just know that nobody knows everything. So I've been a founder of this, you know, tech company. I don't even know if we're a startup anymore, but you know, I'm surrounded by a lot of men in, you know, in the workplace, and just kind of, you know, a lot of male founders. And I used to get really intimidated, because I live in Victoria, British Columbia, actually. It's like a 2-hour ferry or like an hour and a half ferry from Vancouver. And you know, we don't have too many female entrepreneurs here, especially in the tech space. So I would be like a lot of times either the only one or one of the few. And it used to intimidate me so much, because I was like, oh my gosh, there's not as many women, and there's so many men, and they know each other. Everybody knows everybody, and they're so talented, and the things they're doing. But over the last 6 years, I can tell you, I've learned they're not much smarter than me. And this is not me tooting my own horn, but it's like you really learn that everybody has room for improvement. You bring something incredible, and that's why you're here. And that nobody will know everything. And people who claim to know everything or seems to know everything, there's probably a problem. So focus on being better, and not like, I need to know everything. Because I know as an immigrant, we fall into this trap of we need to know everything. No, you don't. Even for jobs, you don't need to have all the qualifications. You need to have some core, but also desire to learn and be better. And that shines through. Okay, third thing, learning to be uncomfortable and put yourself out there. Now, this is something that I'm still working on. A lot of times, like recently, I was part of this committee to put together a conference, which is where, they invite you and they basically are looking for your guidance on who should we invite to speak. And it's a business conference where there's a lot of, government professionals, academia, business owners. It's all like leaders attending, and I basically asked them to put me on one of the panels. And as somebody who's part of the steering committee, it was a bit uncomfortable because I'm basically saying, hey, I nominate myself to be a speaker, because our job is to find speakers or recommend people and see like who might be a good fit. So I put myself out there, and it's super uncomfortable, but you have to do that. Like, you have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations that, not all uncomfortable situations, please, but in situations where this is going to help me be better. This is going to help me grow. And if I get this opportunity, it will be really good for me. So, and that goes for a lot of times, networking events. The fact that you're here to learn, it's fantastic. But try to see like, okay, what's going to really help me grow? Like, okay, if people knew me more, or if I was at every event possible, like obviously it's not humanly possible to go to every event, but like if I was going out there a lot, people would get to know me. And talking to strangers, reaching out to people who could help you. A lot of times, that can be really uncomfortable, but do that. Put yourself out there, because I can tell you how many times like I've had to be uncomfortable, and it's been so incredibly fruitful for me. So one of the examples I can give you is when I think it was 5 years ago, I realized that I wasn't doing too much on LinkedIn, and I needed to put myself out there. Like, I had this company, and I was thinking, okay, maybe I can work with some influencers, maybe I could reach out to some people who have a good network to talk about what we're doing. And I remember one of the people I met earlier in my kind of tech startup journey was this woman. She looked at me and she said, look, I really like you, and I want people to see that. I want people to see that they want to connect with you and they want to listen to you, and not you partnering with an influencer and for them to listen to them. And she said, you bring what they don't bring. So this is your company, this is your baby. Like, why are you even thinking that you're not good enough? So I remember putting this little video with my phone, like literally it was one of the worst kind of like, the angles were terrible. Like, my phone was literally like put down below with all my extra, we all know what we're talking about here. So with all that, I just put together this video. And I think I talked about, Simon Sinek's, he's a famous author and speaker, his model of why, like focusing on the why you're doing something. So I put together that video, and as uncomfortable as it was to hit post, I did it. And it was incredible because I had done something that I thought it was kind of horrible to put out, but I did it. And B, I got so much amazing feedback. People were like, this really resonates with me. And one thing I learned in that process, a lot of times we think when we're speaking, when we're getting out there, people are focusing on us. Actually, no. Well, sometimes, depends. But it's more what we have to say. If we can shift the focus from what am I looking like? How am I presenting? I mean, how you present is important, but like a lot of times we focus on the wrong things of like, oh, is my hair good? Like, am I looking okay? Like, have I, anyway, just superficial things. But what I learned was, even though all those angles were horrible, but people really cared about what I had to say. And that became kind of my beacon of whenever I have to speak somewhere, I really focus on, okay, what I have to say, is it going to be helpful? What I have to say, is it worth listening to? If the answer is yes, then that really takes the kind of anxiety off of that situation, because it's like, it's not about, are people aren't going to be like, oh, what is she looking like? It's like, oh, what is she saying? Like, is that of value? And so just focus on that. Learn to be uncomfortable. Please put yourself out there, because over time you're going to get better. And yeah, I mean, again, it also falls into the same like practice, right? So Four, ask for help. Now, again, my writing center example was like, I asked for help. I recognized, even though I still have a little bit of that ego, like I'm good enough. But sometimes you don't feel that way. And it can be hard to ask for help depending on the situation, but please ask for help. The good news is what I've learned over the last 18, 19 years of me being here, most people want to help us. Like most people, if they see that desire in you to grow, to learn, to be better, they will want to help. So ask for help. And maybe, you know what? Some people won't help you, but others will. So put yourself out there, ask for help. You don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. Yeah, so please, for anything, ask for help. And last but not least, focus on your strengths and what you bring to the table rather than, oh, I lack this. Because everybody lacks something. Everybody has room for improvement, their own sort of, weaknesses. What is it that you bring? And just focus on that, especially in situations where you're lacking that confidence. So, okay, we're done here. If you have any questions, because we're going to now move to imposter syndrome. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions. I don't see any. Okay. I'm going to move on to the next one. So imposter syndrome. Now, maybe you can share with me here well, first of all, let me just quickly describe imposter syndrome for those of you who may be new to the word. The imposter syndrome is where you feel like you're pretending to be something you're not. You're not really good enough, but you're showing that you're good enough. And that, sometimes you feel like, oh, like, what if they find out the real me? They're going to be like, oh, she actually doesn't know enough, or he doesn't know enough. So imposter syndrome is just feeling like you're not good enough and you're not worthy of whatever it is that you're getting or whatever situation that you're in. So how many of you, please, I would love to hear in the webinar chat here, how many of you, oh, wait, can people interact? Maybe in the other open question Q&A. How many of you have felt that way? How many of you have felt like, but we're not good enough, or like, what if they find out? Yeah, thank you for sharing. Julia. Yeah. Okay. So the good news is that you're not faking anything. You're just feeling fear. Yes, I will make a note of this question. How do you know toxic environment? Maybe Nydia, we can make note of all these questions and then we can kind of go over them. And so, a lot of times, yeah, absolutely. Working as a senior developer, you feel a lot of that imposter, like, but I haven't done this before. Well, guess what? There's always a first time. Nobody gets be born without knowing much. So my question to you, obviously, I wanted to ask you, by the way, that's a super creepy image. I wanted to ask you if you had felt it. And then I wanted to share a bit of truth about that, and then also story time. So, the truth is, like I shared, the truth is that it's really just fear of doing something that you haven't done before, or doing something where you think you're not as good as somebody else that or just feeling like, yeah, just fear of rejection, right? And maybe you have faced rejection before, and then you feel like, well, clearly I'm not good enough, and why am I doing this again? But the truth is that holds us back. That really holds us back. And most people fear it. A lot. I think I had even found this article where somebody had shared, it's a label given to women and minorities to make them feel bad about themselves, type of thing. But the reality is that I think it's just a fancy word. By the way, the spelling is wrong. Syndrome has an E at the end. But the reality is that it's actually fear, right? It's a fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of like, maybe somebody will be like, well, she acts like this, but she's really not all that great. So I think the fear is actually a good thing. It means that you care. It means that you want to do better. It means that you want to be better, and you want to change your situation, whatever that is, right? And so the truth is that everybody faces fear. It is a fancier word of basically saying you have fear of some kind, but everybody faces it. And if you don't have fear, like, I think it's a good thing. We can take fear and use that to fuel, our working towards a goal, or we can use fear and use the fear of failure to hold us back. So what I do in these situations is remind myself that there's a bigger fear than fear of rejection and failure, and that is a fear of regret. I do not want to regret. I don't know about you all, but I do not want to have regrets that are unnecessary. Because every time when I look back at my career and my life, it's those regrets that really bug us. It's not like, oh, like a fail, whatever, like get back up, let's do it again, right? Like, if failure is holding you back, I want you to practice a few things. One is, say like you have interviews coming up, and maybe, you want to prepare for like a great interview. Go into it just thinking, okay, I'm going to get 20 rejections. Just go with that. Not that you want rejection. It's just more like, you know what? Let's do this. Let's get 20 rejections to get to my yes. And if you have that mindset, you'll have a little bit of like lack of that fear, because you're going to be like, you know what? I might be rejected and I'm ready for it. It just prepares you a little bit. And then you go in there and you still try to do your best and you crush it. And chances are, maybe, the job market is tough, right? Like right now, especially, whatever, like you may get rejection, you may get a no, but you're getting better, right? Like the more you practice, use this as an opportunity, you're getting better. And there will be something out there for you that, your journey would have prepared you for it. So use your fear of regret to fuel you and go, if I don't do this, I'm going to regret. So even with that speaking thing where I put myself out there and I said, hey, like, can I be a speaker? I actually, interestingly, I didn't hear the first time. I didn't hear back from them the first time. And I was like, uh-oh, I'm part of the steering committee. We're going to have a meeting. I haven't heard back from them. And I did have a meeting and my heart was pounding. Nobody brought it up, thankfully. But I also didn't want to bring it up, be like, hey, I sent you an email, because there's a lot of other people on the board of that committee. And so, but you know what? I realized that wasn't the right opportunity for me. I reached out again saying, hey, just put me on any panel. So at first I was very specific, put me on this panel. They clearly didn't. And then I reached out saying, hey, put me on any panel. I really want to speak. And my goal was to basically, put my company's name out there, put myself out there, so people knew more about me, all these business leaders. But I could still do that by being on any panel. Because all the panels are fantastic. And so, I didn't let that first rejection of like, oh, I didn't even hear back, like they don't want me as a speaker. I used the fact that if I don't do my best and make sure that I get this opportunity, I'm going to regret. What if they didn't see my email, right? So always think of like, am I going to regret this? And if you think that you're going to regret not taking action on something, that is your sign to do it. And failure is part of life. You will hear a lot of no's. You will hear a lot of rejection. You may get, fired. You may get laid off. You may get, like 100 no's before you get a great job. Like, it's part of life. And just use this as a learning opportunity. Like, what could I have done better, right? Instead of, oh, I'm a loser, like I didn't get this. Because I used to feel that way, but I've learned over time, you know what? This is an opportunity for me to grow. Okay, I'm going to stop here. Story time. So I have two stories to share. So sometimes with imposter syndrome, it's not just how we feel about ourselves, but it's also how others perceive us and how that's communicated to us. That can validate like, well, I don't belong, clearly. So one of the stories I have like on a personal doubt was just before COVID hit in 2019, I was invited to do a breakfast keynote at a big conference with 1,400 people in the audience. And somebody invited me to speak. And I was like, a keynote. Like I used to, I would put myself out there and just speak, whatever opportunity I got just to get better at it, right? Like share my story, get better, better practice, better speaking, good feedback. But this was the first time that I was invited to speak to 1,400 people and breakfast keynote. If people are listening to you, they're having breakfast, but they're listening to you. And there's going to be like influential people in Vancouver, a lot of government, a lot of tech, a lot of big businesses. And I remember just feeling that imposter syndrome. I also had a bigger reason as to why I felt this way is because the lunch keynote was going to be Arlene Dickinson. Now, I don't know if you know Arlene Dickinson, but she's like, most of us have watched Shark Tank in US. It's where entrepreneurs come and they pitch their idea and there's like investors. And anyway, so she is on Dragon's Den, which is Canadian version of Shark Tank. And she's an amazing investor, very famous. And so she was going to do lunch keynote and I'm doing morning keynote. And I was like, what is going on? Anyway, so instead of being like, oh my gosh, like be paralyzed or I can't do this, I was like, okay, I am feeling this way, maybe because I haven't done this before. And this is also a sign, like sometimes we know a lot of times we feel this way, imposter syndrome, because we haven't done this before, but that's where you need to be uncomfortable. And so I actually sought help. I reached out to one of my mentors and I said, hey, I have this coming up. I need to connect with a speaker. So I invested my time, a little bit of money to connect with somebody who actually used to help people do presentations. And so I'm going to be mindful of time here. And so I reached out for help. Again, it's going back to those tips of like, how do you overcome confidence issues? You ask for help. So I asked for help and we prepared that speech and I practiced so many times that it was making me sick. Like I could say that whole speech. It was a 20-minute TED Talk style where no presentations, no slide deck. You're just standing there, 1,400 people, spotlights on you, and you're going for 20 minutes, right? Like it's nerve-wracking when I think about it. And so, but I practiced so much. I had good sleep. I took care of myself and I got up there and I crushed it. Like there was pin drop silence. And again, what really helped me there is obviously preparation, but also like focusing on what I have to say. Is my story good enough? Is this going to help the people that are in the audience? Is it going to resonate with them? If that's the case, who cares? Like how, I'm talking and how I'm looking like and whatever, like it's what I have to say. And I kept on reminding myself every time I felt a bit of fear, like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to forget it. Like I just reminded myself what I have to say. It's good enough. It's going to be helpful, valuable. And I'd practiced so much that I could just say it in my sleep. So that's one time where I felt it, but again, with work, practice, help, I got through it. And then I started to get more keynotes. But then the other one is where I was presenting at Collision Conference in Toronto. It's a big conference, tech conference where 35,000 people come. And we had a little booth, this was in 2021 or 2019, I forget. But it was a long time ago. And I remember we had a booth and I had hired somebody to help me at the booth. And I was talking to somebody, one of the attendees, and I saw my colleague. She was talking to somebody and she got really upset and she comes over to me looking really upset. And then I remember just kind of was like, hey, what's going on? Like what happened? And she's like, you have no idea what this man said to me or what this person said to me. And I was like, what happened? And she said, he was asking about the origin story of your company. And I was sharing, our founder, like Humaira, she's standing here. And I was telling him about the company and he looks over at you and he goes, oh, it's her company? No way. Like, she looks like she works in marketing. And my colleague was just like, what did you just say? Like, what does that mean? Like, you again, like, because there's not very many women founders and CEOs of tech companies. There's not as many, people just don't see, like, when we think of like a tech CEO, we don't have that representation, right? And a lot of times, people at the booths, like they will hire, women in marketing, and a lot of times they look a certain way. So there's a lot of stereotyping that happens. But that's her opportunity. Like I could have been like, oh no, like people are seeing me as like, I couldn't be the owner of this company. But instead of that, I was like, you know what? This is the fuel for me to change representation. I am part of that small group that is changing representation. And so again, there's a lot of times you will feel almost like somebody's saying, you don't belong here, but you do. And it's your perspective and how you move forward or past that. So in light of time, these are just some tips that you will get. All of you will get this. So this is just, I thought I would put together, 12 tips here, regardless of whatever your situation is. This could be a cheat sheet, focus on it, and hopefully it will help you be more confident. And remember, confidence takes time. I wasn't born with confidence. I continuously work on it. I'm actually coming up doing some things that I've never done before. But again, I'm using my own advice and I'm working through it, remembering that not everybody knows everything. I have what it takes, and I need to follow this. So work on clear, concise communication. A lot of times you start to ramble, and I still do that sometimes. Like, I love to talk. Pakistanis love to talk. And so it's like, we're working on more concise communication, not talking more than I need to. Good engaged eye contact. Now, if you're on, VanHack does a great job of teaching people all these things. But if you're in person, don't be creepy. Don't look too much into somebody's eyes, but make good eye contact. Say things with confidence. I see a lot of times people are looking here and there and they're talking, and it's like, look, like, no, if you want to hold my attention, I want you to look right at me. Good eye contact, strong handshake, especially if it's in person, and body language is key. If you're on a call, virtual call, if you're, wanting to make an impression, it's an interview or a presentation, make sure you're leaned in, make sure your body language is really strong, really good, that you want to be there and not like, oh yeah, okay, like, don't be slouchy, because we can tend to be that way, but practice your good posture and have good body language. Virtually, yeah, please remove all distractions. If it's virtual, a lot of times it will be virtual right now, but remove all distractions. Like, even as I was doing this, I came to my desk and there was a lot of weird type of stuff here, like my business cards printed, like all that stuff. So I had to remove all of this to make sure that I had no distractions. And my cat is home, but I was like, cat has other places to be. So make sure you do all you can to remove distractions. Write down all potential questions you might be asked and have your answers ready. Practice, practice, practice. Get a friend, get your family, whoever, talk to your cat, talk to your dog, but ask questions and answer them. Prepare a short yet compelling pitch about you, like something that's memorable. Like for me, there's, because of my company, we've supported so many people. We have worked with a lot of companies, we've generated lots of revenue. And it's like, what am I going to talk about? I can't share all of that, but what is the one thing that's going to give impact? So for me, it's like, I'm Humaira Ahmed. I'm the CEO of BestHuman. I don't need to tell all my story. It's like, it's a leading leadership development platform, and we've supported over 4,000 professionals globally. Great. Maybe you'll remember part of it. Maybe you won't, but maybe you'll remember, wow, like she's done some work, right? Like, and maybe we should talk to her. Versus me saying, I don't know, I don't know, like, I'm the CEO of BestHuman, I'm the founder, we started 6 years ago, we did this, and it's like, like, what? Like, nobody cares. You want to be memorable. So short, concise, work with somebody, maybe message me on LinkedIn, and I'll work with, I won't work with you on it, but I can give you feedback. Make it short and memorable. Ask meaningful questions. A lot of times in interviews too, like I've hired lots of people, like over 25 since I started my company. And the people that have been memorable are people who ask meaningful questions. One person asked me, what's your vision for the company? And I was like, ooh, I like that. Other times, I overshare. So maybe I've already shared what you wanted to ask me, but it's the meaningful questions that stay with me. Because if you, as an interviewee, is not asking questions, it shows me that you don't care as much, right? Like, but even if it's like one question, one or two, so write down a list of 5 questions. And if the interviewer or whoever you're meeting with has already answered some of those, like maybe there's at least one question that you can kind of ask them. It just shows, again, it's not about, you're asking questions or not, it's about you showing intention and care. And smile, please. People will remember. I can tell you that, especially if it's virtual, we're drained, we're tired, we're on like this all day. So if you want to make a lasting impression, make sure that you smile and you're positive, you're optimistic, because sometimes, you know what, and I tell this to just my kids and everybody that I meet, is that a lot of times we hire people not because you're the most skilled, but it's because you have some traits, some characteristics that cannot be trained easily on. So your attitude, your ambition, your drive, your friendliness, your smile, like those are things that I cannot teach you, and I don't have time to teach you. So it's like, if you bring all of that together, you will learn on the job, right? Like a lot of times, it's like train for what do they say? Train for skills and hire for attitude. So again, smile, present your best self, because you want to be around somebody. People want to be around people who are optimistic and not, bring them down. Use less and doubtful words, like I just wanted to do this, or I have just completed my, I don't know, like computer science degree, or I have just done this. No, just will minimize what you're saying. And if I'm saying like, oh, I just finished this report, versus I finished this report, it's fantastic, it took some time, but I'm so happy with what I did, versus, oh yeah, I was just working on this report, I just finished it. It's like, it shows doubt and it's not good. So, and also try to steer away from words like might, or I tried, or I will try. It's like, I'll do it, versus I will try to do it. That's just an example. So focus on what you did. Oh, there's also an I statement. We'll come down to that. So also be respectful and considerate of people. Like if you say you're going to show up at 10, show up at 10. If you can't make it at 10, message people beforehand and let them know that you'll be a little late. So be respectful and considerate, build a personal connection somehow, research people beforehand, see what they like, what they're interested in. If you can find that information, use I statements rather than we. So I used to do this a lot. I would say things like, even people who are no longer with the company, I would just always say like, we did this, like we founded Locale, or my company now BestHuman. And it's like, who's we? Why am I afraid to say I founded this company? And I think women and, immigrants, we tend to be more inclusive. Like we did this, but no, I started this company. I founded my company. And I am the owner of the company, versus we. So focus on your accomplishments. Like you did something. Sure, if the question's around teamwork, sure, you can say we. But a lot of times people want to see what you have done, who you are, what you bring. Seek feedback. If you don't get a job, or you don't get something, whatever you're looking for, ask for feedback. I've actually done it. I was declined this job that I thought I was overqualified for. I was like, I have everything they're looking for, and yet I'm still not getting this job. I reached out to the hiring manager, and he was like, actually, I would love to go for coffee with you. I was like, oh, that's interesting. You didn't give me the job, now you're going to go for coffee with me. So we meet, and he said, you were so fantastic that we were so worried that you were not going to be happy in your job. And looking back now, because I have hired lots of people, I can tell you that it was more that the person who was going to be my manager felt that I could easily do their job better than them. And sometimes that can happen where people feel a bit like, oh, like they're, that fear, right? Like, oh, this person might be better than me. And I don't want to lose my job. And, the VP who I went for coffee with really liked me. He was like, you can go places, you can do this, you can do that. So that's, again, I don't know if that's for sure, but that's kind of my observation after having hired so many people, is that sometimes people won't hire you because they're like, oh, like you might be better than me and you might take over my job. So fear, can hold you back too. So seek feedback, whatever that is. Seek feedback, and you will be good. Okay. I know I went over, but I hope that this was valuable. And please, any questions? We do have some time here. So over to you. Do you want to join the call and we can kind of look at some questions together?
Yes, such an amazing. Thank you so much, Humaira. I'm always learning
You're
from
welcome.
you. And especially like the imposter syndrome, how was like beautiful to see it like as a fear. And when you say
Mhm.
like the fear of regret is
Yeah.
bigger than the fear of, doing something and challenge
Mhm.
yourself, this is very amazing. Thank you very much
Yeah.
for sharing that.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
um, MD Anam is asking how to improve communication.
Mhm.
Can you see that like from your end?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
So
amazing.
I would say honestly, like, so those tips that I shared, print those out. Lydia, I'm going to send my presentation to you. But honestly, just practice it. So watch something. So if you're saying communication skill, I'm assuming you mean English language communication skills.
Yeah.
I would watch a lot of the news. I will repeat it back. I will keep on saying it. I will practice interview questions. Again, it's about practice, right? And this takes time. I don't speak like this now because I just magically did this. No, I learned over time and I've improved it enough. Obviously, 18 years is a long time. That now it's a lot easy, right?
Yeah.
So work on that and practice with your friends, with your family, with people you don't know. Reach out, and maybe you'll say wrong thing. I mean, who cares? My mom to this date, I tell my mom, like, Mom, you need to stop with this hesitation. Like, she couldn't even order a coffee for her, even though she knows how to order a coffee. She just wouldn't do
Mhm.
it because she was like, well, what if I say something wrong? I'm like, Mom, who cares? You
Yeah.
want coffee? Communicate to get coffee. Communicate to
Yeah.
get what you want. So
Yeah.
practice, right? And so she practiced. And so practice with a mirror, record yourself,
Oh,
see how you're saying, look at people, how they're talking, and just emulate that, right? Like just follow
yes.
that and work on it. Maybe every week you can have a goal of like, okay, I'm gonna learn 10 new words this week and I'm gonna incorporate them in my interview skills, right? So practice. My past experience, because I end up focusing on past company. How do I highlight myself? What should be my tone? I think you should really focus on what you want versus your past experiences too. Like, even though sure, you can so I think there's a star method. When I used to interview, there's like a star method where it's like you have a situation. What is that? Is it a task? So the
Yes.
situation that happened, a task, action you took,
And the
and R is
results.
what?
And the results.
And the results. So here was a
Amazing.
situation. Here was the task that, at hand that we had to do. Here's the actions that we took, and here's the results that we got. So use the STAR method, Ankita, to do that, but also highlight yourself. You're not your past job. You are a
Mhm.
whole lot more than that. Take experiences from your school, take experiences from your life. And people love to see that dynamism, right? Because if everybody talks about certain things, like same things, how are you memorable? So really highlight yourself, focus on your strengths, what you bring. We all have something great. And focus on that. And yeah, STAR method I think would be great. Your tone, positive. Focus on positive. When you practice and you look in the mirror, if I say the same thing, if I say, as an example, um, I have spoken at 50 conferences, as an example, right? If I say, well, I think I was just looking at, I think like 50 I've spoken, or I say, I've spoken at 50 conferences and here's what I've learned. Big difference. There's one is like doubtful, like, I don't know. And one's like, this is what I've done, even if it was 48, right? Just say
Yes.
that. Be confident in what you're saying, and be very optimistic and more like, not might, tried, whatever, right? So focus on like really assertive language.
I liked it when you said
Well,
that just word. I just finished, and it's so
I
sometimes we
know,
use that a
I
lot.
know.
And oh
Yeah.
my goodness, Humaira, you changed my life today. I always
No
like
more just,
no
no
more
more just.
just, please.
No, because I think it's like assertive, right? Like, I completed this versus, I worked on it. Again, it's also concise communication, right? Like, I completed this project on time,
Mhm.
fantastic, awesome, versus I try to complete it, I just got it done. And yeah, there's a big difference in how you come across. And there's lots of those tools, right? So the tip sheet that I have, it has 12 tips. It has some kind of details too. Please use that as a, maybe print it out somewhere, practice everything. And yeah, Riaz, maybe send me a note. Unfortunately, we can't hire volunteers for work. Like you have to pay people. Like I have never hired anybody without, you know, without paying them. Second language, and I feel uncomfortable. But you know, again, this is the thing. I wish I didn't have to change my accent. I really do wish, because it took away a part of my identity, and only now I can say this, only now I can share this, because I've learned a lot of obviously experiences that who we are and where we come from matters. You know, we have so much experience. We have such cultural, like deep, rich experience that we should be proud of showcasing, you know, rather than trying to learn like how other people speak. It has helped me for sure. But I do think if I wish I had stayed true to my culture and my language and still just improved my communication skills. So, okay, I think that's it. I think there was one question that I had seen before that I wanted to answer. I know we're over time. Oh my goodness.
No
to run soon to one question. Where was it? Sorry, I'm just trying to find that question. How do you handle a toxic environment? I don't know, Francis, if you're still here. Yeah, I mean, there's different ways. I think figuring out, is it toxic just to you, or is it toxic to everybody? If it's toxic to everybody, you should remove yourself from that situation, because you're not going to be able to make the impact. If it's only, and maybe, you know, I think if you have a job and you're working at a company and it's toxic culture, whatever have you, then, you know, obviously the market is tough. Start interviewing elsewhere, look for other jobs. But I think you need to see if it's just targeted towards you, or if you feel it, and maybe it's how you feel. Is this how you feel? Or is this actually like, it is toxic to you, where you're uncomfortable, you're losing sleep, you're not happy, you're dragging your feet every day? Or is it that it's toxic to everybody? If it's toxic to everybody, again, you can't change that situation. You got to remove yourself from that situation. But if it's toxic just to you, I would look at why. I've been fired 3 times, and I have no shame in admitting that. You know, and a lot of times that they were either not a good fit with what I wanted to do, because I just have this energy, I want to get things done. I would not be a good fit for a government job, as an example, right? Like I would just be like, well, things are not moving. Like, I don't care about this money. Like, I want to do things. And so it's just identifying, is it toxic to you, and why that might be, right? Like, is it that, you know, is it your manager, why they might be? Is it that you're better than them? Because that can happen, right? Like that can happen where there's some jealousy, and it's a human emotion. So is it that there's jealousy? Is it that they don't like you? If that's the case, why don't they like you? I think sometimes we get too inside our heads and just overthink, but figure out why that might be the case. Is it that it's new leadership? They don't connect with you? Can you move into a different department? Can you find, you know, more allies outside of your management? Like, again, it really depends on what the situation is. And if you find it's something maybe that you do, maybe that you bring. A lot of times we have blinders, right? Like we think we're doing great, but maybe we're not. Maybe we're not meeting expectations. So the good thing to do is like always go with like, and maybe this is overdoing things, but you know, at least you'll have clarity. Like have a meeting with your manager or whoever it is. If it's a peer, there's a problem, and talk to them. But you know, maybe that's not going to solve the issue. But if it's your manager, you absolutely need to figure this out and just be more like, hey, I've noticed that, you know, things are not as clear between us, or I think there's some miscommunication happening. Do you feel that way too? Chances are, if it's happening, the other person's feeling it too, and they might say, yeah, I do. And it's like, okay, well, let's just talk about it. Like, what is it that, you know, can I help? Like, is there anything? Because if you want to be there, to say, I would love to be here, but I just feel like the last little while things have not been the same, right? So again, it really depends on the situation, but communicate. I know we feel threatened. We feel like, oh, I can't ask my boss, like this, something's weird, right? But you should, in a way that's respectful. Be like, I've been feeling a bit like, you know, I think there's lack of alignment, there's a lack of communication. I would love to maybe like clarify that. Like, is it just me thinking it, or is there something that we could work on together? And that way, at least you're kind of putting it on the other person to like kind of address it, but you're bringing forward. And again, be uncomfortable. I know it's uncomfortable, but the more you do it, you'll get better. And worst case scenario, you know, you kind of at least get the answer.
Yeah.
to whatever that situation is. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I hope this was helpful.
Was very helpful, Humaira. I can't thank you enough. Thank you like very much for your time, for all the preparation, everything that we are sharing with us today. I'm gonna send you guys like the presentation, Humaira's
Yeah, I'll send it to you right
presentation.
away. Yeah.
Also like Best Humans website, so you can see what Humaira is doing from her end, and also follow her on LinkedIn. She's always sharing about diversity, empowerment, and I really love to follow her. Like it's very insightful and inspirational.
Yes,
And
and add me on LinkedIn.
yeah, I can share
Please
your
add me on LinkedIn.
yeah,
And if
yeah. Share. I'm gonna share like her LinkedIn here. Let me just go here quickly. Here we go. Here we go. And I'm gonna share right now in the chat. But of course, I can share via email as well with the material for this webinar. And I think we are heading to an end. Thank you very much, Humaira.
thank you for having me. Thank you, everybody.
Always good to
Have
have
a
you.
great rest of your
I'll
day.
see you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye,
Thanks,
guys.
Julia. Bye.
Bye-bye.